I have my garden paged off. I'm new at this, but
Yeah.
you know, you hear about
I don't.
salmonella, you know, scare with spinach, and you have to worry about
Most of that is just, it's the product of the crappy way that we produce our food these days. Hear about the E. coli problem with meat? You know, a grass-fed cow cannot have the bad E. coli in it. It simply will not grow in the gut of a cow eating grass. Cows are supposed to eat grass. Well, what do? We feed them corn, we feed them grain. When you do that, you change the pH, the acid acidity level in the rumen, in their intestine. And when you do that, you get bad bacteria going. So if everybody ate grass-fed beef, we wouldn't have any of the bad E. coli. It's just a product of the crappy way we raise animals and things. I don't worry about it. I pick and eat directly out of my garden. I mean, I'll wash my hands if I've been out petting the cows or whatever else, which I don't do intentionally. But anyway, if my hands are dirty, I'll wash them before I start picking. But no, I don't worry about washing things out of the garden. Okay, cute. Oh, yes, sir.
Can I digress for just a moment? When we first started, you were talking about the establishing the garden. And we're about 30 miles north of here. There is
Me too.
There is no dirt. So
Me too.
How deep should you were talking about getting the soil from new earth, how deep should it be, and then you're adding ladybug, how deep should that be?
I would want probably 10 inches of soil to grow in. The amount of ladybug, add as much as you can afford. An inch or two would be great. Most of us settle for half an inch or less. Okay. Now, I live outside of Bernie. Parts of my ranch have deep soil, parts that much soil, but yeah, you can create raised beds.
So we'll be starting from, I mean, there's grass growing everywhere. How do we just mow that down and put the new dirt on top of it?
Mow it off. If they're native grasses, that'll probably get rid of them. If it's Bermuda, it's going to be an ongoing problem, and it will come up through. What I would do is, you know, you're going to make, no garden's big enough. Everybody has a garden, wants to make it bigger next year. We'll plan on making it bigger next year. In the middle of the summer this year, pick out the place where you're going to increase your garden. Get some plastic and cover it over with plastic, weight the edges down, leave that there for 6 weeks. It will fry out every grass and every seed underneath it. And then you won't have to deal with that. You're going to deal with some weeds this year.
So what, that's June, July, August?
Yeah, the hotter it is, the brighter it is,
yeah.
The better the solarizing works.
My last question about the soaking the seeds. I heard him, Howard, talking about soaking in Garrett juice this morning.
He does that. I don't. But, you know, he's rather fond of products that have his name on them. That he gets a percentage of when they sell. I'll probably try it this year. I just use water, sometimes with a little seaweed in it. It works extremely well.
There's a question here.
Yes, sir.
You talked about beans.
Uh-huh.
You let vine. What about cucumbers?
Cucumbers are my next topic. Is there somebody else over here who has a question?
I have a quick question.
You're welcome, guys.
Do you have a website, like, you know, if we don't catch any of this, other than coming to?
Well, you should have gotten the handout. We'll have a lot of information. We're about to have a brand new website within a couple of weeks. We do have a website, and the address will be the same. Shades of Green SA is in San Antonio, shadesofgreensa.com. But our new website's going to be about 20 times bigger and better, and we're probably about 2 weeks away from launching it.
Did y'all record last week?
No, nobody was here last week.
No, I was here.
I mean, Jason wasn't here last week, and our other gentleman with the video camera wasn't here.
Do y'all have a schedule on these?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Ask to be put on our email mailing list. We send a monthly newsletter. We prefer to do it email. That way you get it on time. Everybody knows why the post office raised the rates was to pay for storage. We hear about people that got their mail after the seminar was already held, so if we do it email, we know you're going to get it.
Okay.
Okay, let's talk about cucumbers. Cucumbers are easily grown. Cucumbers are a vine. Cucumbers need something to grow on. I've grown living cucumbers in tomato cages and probably have 20, 30, 40 cucumbers at a time on each cage. It's a great way to grow them. I also grow them on, you know, fencing, that same type of fencing I was telling you about. Important things to know about cucumbers are pick them at the right size. It's kind of like squash, which we're going to talk about next. The contest is not to see who can grow the biggest one, because by the time they get huge, lots of times they're tough, and different cucumbers should be picked at different sizes. There are many, many varieties of cucumbers. If you want the little gherkins, plant the varieties that make the little gherkins. If you want the Armenian cukes that are this long, this big around, and still very sliceable and good, plant Armenian cucumbers. But just know which variety you want. If you want to pickle them, then plant one of the varieties that makes that nice, fat, medium-sized cucumber that's just the right size for pickling. Choose the right variety. Plant them, I usually plant them probably 6 inches apart, and they produce just on and on through the summer months. We talked about the plant wash and the cornmeal tea for mildew. That's about the only problem that ever gets on the cucumbers is mildew. Keep it under control and they'll produce virtually all summer. Now, one thing about this group of plants, the cucurbits, the cucumbers, the squash, the pumpkins, the melons, the first several flowers that come out when they start making flowers are male flowers. All they make is pollen. When you look at that little flower, you'll see the bright yellow pollen in there, but it will never ever make a cucumber or a squash or a melon or whatever else. Those flowers are male only. And on a given vine, it may be the first 4, it may be the first 10 flowers that come out will be male flowers. And you're going to be thinking, I got all these flowers, but I got no cucumbers, no squash, no melons, whatever. It's a normal thing. The first batch of flowers do not produce any fruit. The next batch of flowers that come out further down the vine will be the female flowers. And if you look at right behind where the flower is, you'll see the little tiny squash or cucumber or melon or whatever else. You guys, thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
Bring pictures and let us see how your garden did.
Thank you so much.
Certainly. I should warn you, technique that I learned when I worked with Alton years ago, people would come in with fruit that they wanted to brag about. They would walk in with this huge, beautiful tomato, and I knew that all they were doing was bringing it to show it off. But I would always look at them and say, oh, you shouldn't have. And then they felt like they had to leave it with you. And I got a lot of good produce that way. Today I get enough without doing that. But anyway, you will get, believe me, you'll get plenty of cucumbers or squash or melons or whatever else. But be patient. The first flowers are not supposed to produce fruit. Now, in order to get good production from squash or cucumbers or anything else, these, unlike tomatoes and peppers are wind pollinated. You don't need bugs to get fruit from these things. Just the wind blowing the pollen around pollinates the flowers. The cucurbits, you need something to pollinate the flowers, be it honeybees, mason bees, even some kinds of flies pollinate the flowers. And if you have a squash or a cucumber that starts to develop and it's nice and fat for this length, then all of a sudden it goes in this little skinny end down there, it didn't get well pollinated. The seeds that would have developed further on down the fruit didn't get pollinated, so they can't develop and grow. So don't do anything that discourages the bees from coming into your garden. If you feel like you have no bees, you can always plant plants that attract bees. The other thing you can do, what do bees eat? Bees don't eat high fructose corn syrup. Bees eat honey. And if you want to get more bees in your garden, take a shallow saucer, make a mixture of about 1 part honey to 4 or 5 parts of water. Float a sponge in this mixture so the bees don't drown. You'd be amazed how many bees you will draw into that. And that's one way. Again, we've got so many pesticides around. We've got so many problems with honeybees that a lot of people say they're just not nearly as many as there once were. Hear a lot about colony collapse disorder. It's rarely going to be a problem in your garden. And everybody talks about honeybees and how wonderful they are for pollination. The so-called cedar bees or mason bees. You look around here, you'll see some holes in some of these big old pieces of cedar that look like they've been plastered over with mud. This particular bee comes in and drills a hole in there and lays its eggs inside of there. The mason bees are said to be about 40 times as effective as honeybees at pollinating flowers. So any kind of bees you've got in the garden are going to be a help. But for squash, cucumbers, melons, all those things, you really need bees in there if you're going to get good production. Yes, ma'am.
I have a whole lot of bees on this, but I don't know what it is. I think I planted lettuce. I don't want it back.
Take note.
Oh, that's broccoli.
Yeah, no, it's not broccoli. It is something in the lettuce group.
There's a leaf in this.
Yeah, it's could be arugula. Smells like arugula. But you just let it go too far.
Yeah, so, okay.
It's tasty.
Pretty flour.
Oh, it's pretty flour. And on broccoli, I always leave a few heads of broccoli, let them come out and make flowers, just because it brings so many bees into the garden. Before I go further, let me tell you about 2 things that you really ought to have if you get serious about this. If you're new to this, this is the best vegetable gardening book around. It was written by Howard Garrett and Malcolm Beck. There are a ton of vegetable books out there. Most of them are written for